Hi again, everybody. So I've also gotten a couple of questions with regards to getting the participation points for the Zoom discussion. So I'm doing a bit of clarification on that as well. So just to remind people, there's going to be an open Zoom discussion every Wednesday during our class time, but you do not need to come to all of them. You can come to, you'll need to, if you want to get that 10%, you'll need to come to 5 of them, and they're worth 2% each for active participation. So the questions I've been, and you can come to more if you want, but 5 times you need to be an active participant. So again, the instructions are all here, okay, but I understand that students are like, okay, but concretely, like, what's Jackie looking for? What does this mean? So what does it mean to be an active participant? Well, you know, there are explanations there, and I realize finding that happy medium there, like one sentence is not enough and a 5-minute lecture is too much. So what does that happy medium look like? So here is an example of something that you might bring to the table. And I want to remind you, especially those of you who are like mortified at the idea of speaking, even if it's a virtual class and even if there's only 5 or 6 of us, you can put your responses in the chat in Zoom. That is absolutely not a problem, okay? And if that is also stressful, we can talk one-on-one about finding ways to make it more comfortable for you. If you want to pre-record, or you can write your stuff in advance in a document and then copy paste. We'll figure something out to make sure everybody's comfortable. So I'm a student, and I did this week's reading assignments. I did the quiz. So I'm coming to be an active participant this week, and this is what I decide to talk about. So when it's my turn, so there's one thing that confused me a little bit in this week's work. When I watched that video by Ozzy Michelin for the vocabulary quiz, he talked a little bit about Aboriginal, and where I went to school, that's the word that they used. They talked about residential schools, and they talked about Aboriginal people, and they said that this was the word that was respectful. And so I'm a little bit confused about why Aboriginal is not a word that we're supposed to use anymore. He said that it was falling out of favor, but I'd like to know more about why that is and why Indigenous is a better term. Also, I have another class where we learned about Aboriginal people in Australia, and they were also using that word. And so I feel like a lot of my teachers still use it, and so I'm a bit confused. It sounds contradictory to me. Okay, so Jackie the teacher's back. So as you see, like I kind of, what I did there was I brought up, I talked about where I saw the information that was confusing. I referred to a video from this week's reading, and I talked about something very specific, and I explained why I was confused about it, right? It was contradicting information that I already had, and the people who used that word were using it respectfully and actually under the belief that that was a respectful term, but Ozzy Michelin, who is Inuk, is saying that it's not a good word to use anymore. And even in CJAP, I'm getting contradictory information. So what's the scoop, right? So you see, I didn't just say, oh, I didn't understand that whole Aboriginal thing, and leave it at that, right? I also didn't give a 5-minute lecture. I spoke for maybe a minute, right? That's fine. That's all you need to do. If there's nothing confusing, you can comment on something that you found interesting, kind of in a similar way. Like, wow, that map that we looked at with all those overlapping territories? I found that really cool because we're raised to see all these borders, right, between the US and Canada, and between the provinces, and between the states, and things like that. And it's the first time I've seen a map without those things. So I felt a little disoriented because it was harder to identify where my town is and where the borders I'm used to are. So it kind of made me think about how people can live on a land without kind of having these imaginary lines, because when you think about it, these lines were invented by people. They weren't always there. So it just feels like a different way to get around and I guess people would have to, identify their areas by landmarks, like rivers or, other natural features that would help them figure out where they are, So that's just something that's really kind of mind blowing to think about, because it's a whole other way of looking at the world. So something, Jackie the teacher's back, so that's kind of another way that you can do it. So here, and you have other options, right? So if there's something you saw in the news, oh yeah, I saw this thing in the news. I was watching the news with my parents, and there was a protest somewhere, people in their community kind of trying to defend their land, and they interviewed somebody from that community, and they were saying how their ancestors had been there for generations, and just go on like that. So again, you're not, maybe a minute, and again, you have the option to type your stuff in. And if you have two smaller points, maybe just even a minute is too much for you. You have two smaller things, or one of the things is responding to what another student says. And if you come and you weren't planning to be an active participant, you were just coming to hang out and listen and learn, and then you wind up chiming in a significant way, you'll get your participation points. Okay? So that's, pretty much it. If you still need clarification, just don't be shy to get in touch.